today, well, something I'm a bit excited to get into deeply. You've heard about the deep state, but do you really know what the deep state is? Do any of us really know what it is and what it's done to us? Well, there is a lady amongst us who knows all these things, and her name is Carolyn. Carolyn, thanks for joining us today. I am really keen to learn more about the deep state. It's something you've been studying, what, for 20 years or more?
Yeah, that's right.
How did you get into,
Yeah, sorry.
how did you get into it?
I started listening. Well, what actually happened was after 9/11, because I was in a church and we used to always have these prophets come along and they prophesize this and they prophesize that. And then when 9/11 happened, it became incredibly obvious to me that no one had prophesized it. And how could the most significant thing in the modern century not be prophesized? So
Hmm.
I actually literally went online and I used Google and I typed in prophesized 9/11 and up came Alex Jones. And it was 3 months beforehand. And he was there and he was saying, if they fly if they fly a jet into the Twin Towers, you ring them up and you tell them now, the White House now, that you will not believe it. And then they'll try to blame it on someone like Osama bin Laden. And so and it piqued my curiosity. I thought, how on earth did he know? So I started looking into his work, and then I started listening to him. And actually, Alex Jones educated me because for years he would mention a book. He would say, William P. Holgren in his work on the what was it, secrets for silent weapons for quiet war. So I'd pull up the paper and I'd read it, or any of the globalist think tank operations. So I'd pull them up and I'd read them, along with Carol Quigley's work. So I bought anything that he mentioned, I would buy and I would actually read. And so it's basically that's how come I got a really good grip on it.
So the deep state to some people means, well, a few things. They've got a bit of an understanding, something to do with the financial industry, maybe, uh, something to do with the UN, maybe, something to do with, crooked governments anyway, not ours, but, just any old crooked government, not ours, of course. Can we start? Can we define the deep state?
Basically what it is it's a secret network that basically operate. They're unauthorized and they operate independently of the government. They're in the shadows of the government, but they are sometimes enmeshed in government institutions, very often actually enmeshed in government institutions. Key word is they're unauthorized. So when you have somebody who is elected, they're out the front, they're in public. But then you have these secret networks behind that are doing their own thing, that have their own agenda and seeking out their own causes.
So, okay, I imagine that, in some smoky sort of gentleman's club somewhere, there are groups of men who have much power and a lot of money. They might be wealthy industrialists or bankers or whatever. They get together and they say, oh, listen, we don't really like that government. We don't really like this government. I mean, Rupert Murdoch's been accused of creating or falling governments over the years just through his use of media. And that's just in my lifetime. But what you've discovered in your sort of research of the deep state is that it goes back a fair way.
The deep state has always existed in some respects, but mostly in the past it was out in the open. So there was always a vying for the crown. So different factions would support different leaders. There was always a fight for the throne in every culture. And mostly what they would do is once the person got a hold of the throne, okay, the king or queen was enthroned, they would wipe out all of the people who had opposed them.
Yeah.
But because it was always public, everyone knew who was backing whom, or mostly public. There were always secret agents and spies and things like that.
Yeah.
And you had to be out in the open about it, because your rewards, the reason why they wanted to be close to the throne is because that's where your reward came from. So you could, if you backed a king into power, then you would actually be you'd be rewarded with land and wealth and title. So there's always been these factions that have always fought for the seat of power. Where it's changed is that it's become very secret. And you can actually see that it goes back quite to, the most telling thing about a secret government is one of the Rothschilds, when he said, I don't care who's in the seat of power, it's who prints the money.
Yeah.
So if you look at their history, what they've done is they control the money of the country. So therefore they can dictate the policy of the
So
country.
now this is the Rothschild family.
Mm.
So this. Let's outline who we're talking about here. So I think there are 5, but could be as many as 13 families involved in the deepest part of the deep state. Rothschild is one, Rockefeller is another.
Yeah, that's right. There's a number of families, but they're also enmeshed in a Kabbalist belief. So they actually control the deep state, but they put their minions in underneath. So what they will often do is they will often go in and through their foundations, they'll actually change policy. So they'll produce a white paper, and it's all done under the name of charity. Like, for example, Rockefeller backed think tanks to in order to get away from herbalist medicine or natural medicine, and then into the current medicine that we have now. And he did that because he was an oil industrialist. So basically what happened is the byproduct of the oil making became used in the medicines. So, and then he also bought up a lot of then they also invested in or built a lot of the companies that we have today. So a lot of the companies that are producing the medicines that we have today are actually owned by the same people. So the same groups of families operate not only in the military industrial complex, is what Eisenhower said.
Yep.
So what they actually did was they kind of took over America. So they actually hijacked the government, built this huge army, this massive army, and then went out and used it to basically bring everybody else into line around the world.
So let's go to that point. Now, I'm, not nearly as knowledgeable on this as you are, but I'm of the belief and understanding that the Titanic plays a role in the deep state here. We know the story of it hitting an iceberg and sinking. We know it went down with, I think it was 1,500 odd people on board. There were 3 extremely wealthy industrialists that were on board the Titanic when it went down and died with it, that were actually opposing the Rothschilds in their first endeavors to set up centralized banking in America.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's right. So that was a really interesting case. We could go into a lot of detail about that, but I won't. Just to brush over it. So what actually happened was these people did not want the centralized bank, the takeover of the Fed, privatization of the Fed. Yeah. And so they were, even though they were wealthy industrialists, they still believed in the sovereignty of America and the sovereignty of their ability to print or create the money, the wealth. And then suddenly they died, so basically what happened was from that they were able to set up I think it was might have been Christmas
got
Eve.
No opposition, basically. The opposition
there was no opposition.
Died. Yeah.
And it was done in the secrecy of night, and the creature from Jekyll Island goes into that. And basically what happened is they had a little secret meeting, and then it was either New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve. And so they met at Jekyll Island, and they basically created what became the Fed. So that gave them the license to print money out of thin air. Then what they did was they went and they bought up all of the hard assets around the world. So they bought up things like gold, property. They also bought up a lot of things like oils, anything that was worthwhile. They printed the money, they lent it to the American public or to any public, then they charged interest on it so that they had to be paying back. Yeah. So,
and let's not forget they started a war as well, the First World War.
They've always started wars. They've done both sides of the war.
Well, that's the most profitable part of business, isn't it? If you're selling weapons and ammunitions to both sides of the war, then somebody's making money. So,
yeah, I think they figured out that they could make more in one day than they could in a year. During wartime. So war became very profitable for them. So, which is why America has been in a constant state of war. It's like, even though like they've always been involved in some wars overseas and things like that. You know, you had Korea, you have Vietnam, and then also what actually it lends into is John Perkins actually outlines it really well. And I bought this because I thought that your people might want to actually read it, but it's opposite, isn't it? So
no, that's cool. Hold that up.
So yeah, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It's by John Perkins. It's really revealing because it shows how it shows how America really took over the world. So what they would do is they would send somebody in basically, and they would say to the government, oh, your people are poor, how about we'll do this, we'll develop this, or it was all sorts of things. It was, anything from building dams, bridges, whatever, or they'd offer them economic infrastructure. The country would say, well, we can't do that, we're poor. Yep. And they'd say, oh, no, you don't worry about it. Then what they would do is the country couldn't pay it back, and they go in and they take the assets.
In the asset. Okay. It sounds a lot like the Chinese Belt and Road project that they're currently running throughout.
Where do you think they learnt it from?
Dang. History repeating itself? Are you dare to suggest history might be repeating itself, woman? My lord, I'm shocked.
No, I know, and that's why a lot of history is either distorted or not taught today, and it's taught in the most boring way. The real history, the true history, is actually incredibly gripping and incredibly intense, and it's full of things that are real that we don't often look at, or we know on the surface. For example, there's lots of guile, and so guile, when people operate in guile, they're being really nice to your face and things like that. But when somebody, I can actually give you a compliment, but it's actually an insult. But the other people around me know that it's an insult. Lots of betrayal, lots of machinations, like, oh, well, we don't, I'll support this person, but I'll support this person, but I'll support this person. And whoever wins, I win in the end.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of loyalty. And that's what you see. Whereas like in our pop culture, we like to think that, good always wins and there's loyalty always wins and things like that. But if you actually look at it from a government level and from a level of corporate takeover, corporate, take over really. I mean, it's a corporate structure. What's actually happening is there's a lot of machinations that go on in between. And it's not just about greed, it's also about power. If you look at the military industrial complex. So it was first cited by Eisenhower. I've actually got a list here. But going back to, I think it was a guy called Morgenthau actually identified it even as far back as 1955 as well. It's become sort of a little bit of a vernacular due to Trump. Trump was talking about the deep state. So that's how it became sort of as part of our understanding
of the day. Yeah,
that's right.
Now that people have been alerted to the words, some have woken up reasonably quickly. Anybody who followed the 2020 presidential election with any clarity and lack of bias would openly admit that something affected the outcome of that election. It had to be something very powerful, and it had to be able to be effective on a global level, powerful at a global level. So this fits the bill of the deep state that you're referring to.
Yeah, that's right. So are you able to edit here?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, because I've just lost you. I'm just trying to get back in. Sorry.
That's all right.
All right. There you are. Sorry, I had you. I'll just move you up there. So it's basically it's always been with us, but it's not been hidden. However, what's actually happening is it's actually uncloaking. So Trump started to reveal it, but it also started to uncloak itself. For example, Elizabeth Warren, when they were talking about the corporate-backed Trans-Pacific Partnership, she actually said, a chance for these banks to get something done quietly out of sight that they could not accomplish in public place with the cameras rolling and the lights on. Well, why is that? It's because if people knew what was in it, then they'd object. Yeah. And so even though they're uncloaking at the moment, and we're able to see a lot of who they are and which people are involved, it's so, yeah, you know what I mean by that.
What we're unable to see is the people that are involved getting caught for it.
I know.
There is clearly a good side that's working around this. And you mentioned good before. It's probably about time we mentioned the evil side. You've talked about the corporate end of the deep state, but there is a black, dark, evil, and can only be explained as evil side to the deep state.
Yeah, well, it's commonly called the Khazarian mafia, and they actually originated. They don't. This is not what I believe, but this is what they believe. They do not believe that they are human. Okay, it seems to stem back to the Nephilim, the fall of the angels, and sometimes the belief that they came from Cain, that Eve and Lucifer were enjoined together first. And then Cain killed Abel. So it seems to stem back as far as that, but they do not believe that they're human. This is not what I believe. This is what they believe. And so you've got that. So what they did was they were from the area of Khazaria, which is part of Ukraine and also stretched into Kazakhstan. And there's a couple of different stories as to what became of them and how they scattered into the rest of the earth. But it seems that what happened is some point they adopted Judaism. Now they're always Moloch worshippers, so they always Satan worshippers. But there was they harassed their neighbors so much, because what they would do is they would steal children for sacrifice from the neighboring countries. What they would also do is they would any traveler any merchant that was going past or going through, they would actually kill them and assume their identity. So they're great at masquerading as other people and taking on different identities. And so what they would do is they would, what actually happened was in Russia, the king of Russia at that time, he turned to them and he said, look, he goes, you guys have got to take on an Abrahamic religion, because if you don't, we're going to invade and put a stop to this satanic rubbish. And so whether that story is true, or the other story is that they decided, because they were in between an Islamic country and the Catholic Church, they decided to take on Judaism. But whichever one's true, they actually adopted Judaism, but they didn't have a form of Torah Judaism. It was a Talmudic Judaism, but underneath it was kept shrouded in secrecy, was this satanic worship that they have kept up to this day. So, and then around about the 13th century, the king of Russia said, you guys need to stop this. If you don't stop it, we're going to invade. And so he organized the surrounding countries to form a conglomerate, and they were going to invade. The Khazarians knew about this, of course, because they had secret and spy networks. And so I think it was only the elite. It wasn't the whole country, but the elite took off and then went into other parts of Europe, scattered up into, DNA shows that they scattered up as far as Finland, into the other parts of Europe, and down into Jerusalem. So they call themselves the Ashkenazi Jews, but then again, it's not all Ashkenazi Jews. It's like everything. But then what they did is that they later infiltrated into everything. So they converted to Christianity. They converted to wherever there was a seat of power. They decided that's where they basically converted, and they operated, as JFK told us, through infiltration.
Yep.
So, and they're a vast network.
It's not an overt war at all. It's worked from the inside out.
That's right.
So you've mentioned Ukraine a couple of times there. I've been speaking now on the show for some time. If you want to call it supporting Russia in their current action in the Ukraine, then do it that. Call it that if that's going to make you feel better. But they're not attacking the Ukrainian people. They are liberating the Ukrainian people from the Khazarian mafia that you've just outlined, a Khazarian mafia that's been in effect there for the last 1,500 years. If not longer.
Yeah, that's it. Well, they overthrew. What they did was they Yukonovich. Now they weren't actually pro-Russia; they were just neutral on Russia, and so they staged a. Well, we weren't getting a lot of information out of the Ukraine when it was happening. So this is in 2012. So I actually made contact with somebody from the Ukraine, and I said to basically talk about it and say, what is going on there? The story that this person told me was that Antifa came in. So we know now that it was a CIA, George Soros funded, CIA backed coup. And so what they did was they got Antifa basically rioting. Anyone who spoke out against them, they actually turned around and called Nazi.
Yeah.
So, so which is straight out of the
Good at
Saul
branding
Alinsky
people
book.
with their own moniker. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as soon as they got into power, they were literally saluting and clicking heels and that sort of stuff. So that's the story that person told me. So we now know that then what they did was after they took control, they basically bought in Poroshenko, and then they bought in, and now we have Zelensky. Well, Zelensky's a really interesting character, because if you look at his cabinet, it's all made up of actors and script writers, and there's not actually somebody. So he's really, even though he's Jewish and is fronting this Nazi Azov militant or paramilitant organization, which is just really just a front for your globalists. Okay, so you've got a whole heap of you've got Kerry's kid, or you've got relatives of John Kerry, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, which is Hunter Biden, and there's one other person that I can't think of at the moment. So you've got those people on the boards, on energy boards out of Burisma. So as soon as they moved in, they took over the resources, because Ukraine is really rich in resources as far as energy goes, and it's also the food bowl. So in 1914, for every 14 calories that it took to create food, it produced 98 calories. So it's extremely rich in all of these things. So of course everybody's going to want to be a part of it, or want to have a slice of their pie. So now Zelensky's father works at the university in cybernetics. Zelensky himself, so it gets crazier. So Zelensky was part of Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum young person. And what did Dr. Harari, who was recommended by Barack Obama, Dr. Harari, who is now Klaus's chief advisor, say, we're getting rid, the humans are now hackable. We can get rid of all of the, mysteriousness of humans. And so it's just it's always the same group of people. So these cabalists,
they're being open about it. Why aren't people hearing it? I mean, you've heard it, I've heard it. We understand what they're saying. Why are so many other people refusing to hear it when it comes out of their own mouths?
It's a case of it's not getting any publicity. Like if you look at what there was a doctor that came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before, from Ukraine, and he said quite openly that he told his staff, every Russian soldier that came through their way, he told his staff to, no matter what was wrong with them, to castrate them, because they're cockroaches. You've also had them openly saying that Hitler was good. Another one from another representative from the Ukraine saying that Hitler was good because he got rid of the he got rid of all of the scum and that sort of stuff. You also had a Ukrainian cabinet minister saying that we're fighting for the new world order. So it's out there, but what's happening is the legacy media is not covering anything. And so that's the issue, is that people don't know, they're not getting a full coverage. So, I mean, I don't even, on my TVs here, I haven't turned it on in about like 10 years. And when my nieces come over, I find it really difficult. I can't remember even how to turn the damn thing on. Because there's no information on there that is of any use. It's not valued information. It's just, however, on the internet, you have now got a whole group of people who are taking clips and sharing information. And so the information that's out there is growing. So you've got one group of, I would say probably in Australia, it's at least about 30% of people who do not source any information from the media. And it's probably could even be higher than that. And so what they're doing is they actually go and they look at things, and then people have actually looked up the World Economic Forum. And it's not even hidden. It's like Agenda 2030. It's like Agenda 21. They tell you what they're going to do.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not going to bother taking any notice, you get a reaction from our Governor General, like he got the other day, where he said, well, 95% of the people agreed to be poisoned, so I'm not going to do anything about it.
Yeah. And now you've got insurance companies in Europe who are actually winning court cases by the simple argument that it was experimental. So and the judge is ruling in their favor that the person committed suicide.
Of course.
So they didn't die from the vaccine. They died because they wanted to. It's just like, sometimes I just look at it and I just think, do we live in crazy town?
Well, in fact, I've found that to be one of the best ways to red pill people. People have, for some reason, got a mental block. They think that clinical trial is different to medical experiment, and it's not. The only difference between a medical experiment and a clinical trial is scale. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that was a medical experiment. Dr. Jekyll came up with a potion that turned him into Mr. Hyde. He was the person that was experimented on. Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, did medical experiments on other bodies, cut them up and tried to make one out of it. But that was a medical experiment. Medical experiments normally happen on maybe one to groups of up to maybe 100 people. A clinical trial happens to thousands or tens of thousands of people. They're doing the same shit, they're just doing it to a lot more people. They call it for some reason, people have a mental block. Now, you tell me an insurance company anywhere in the world that is going to honor your life insurance policy if you have agreed to voluntarily enter yourself in a medical experiment or a clinical trial.
I know.
Of course,
I know, but
so thank you for the money.
I'm laughing because of the absurdity, but the fact of the matter is it's just so incredibly torturously sad because, these are our people, and we've basically tried to tell them. And it's the problem is that I think it was who was it? I think it was John Howard. They legislated for this change in the TV way back when, but the change in the TV format or whatever it was, it's I think from memory it's with the alpha waves, the flickering rate puts the brain into alpha waves, and so they're easily hypnotized through that or easily suggestible. So when they're actually watching the TV and getting the news from that format, what they're actually doing is their subconscious is actually like buying into it. That's my understanding of it anyway, and that's really incredibly sad because it's not sad, not just sad, it's just it's terrible. It's criminal.
It's an indication of the deep evil inside the deep state. This is a deep plan, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but they believe that there's too many useless eaters, and so they want to see us all dead. And that's just the nature of the beast. But the problem is that it's not just with the military industrial complex, it's actually been emerging, and it's like very obvious to anyone who's been paying attention that the CIA is heavily involved. So if you look at like JFK said he planned to smash it into 1,000 pieces. Well, why is that? Ron Paul has talked about how it's gone rogue. So there's, we do have a problem with this intelligence agencies. And I believe the reason why Trump made that one of his first port of calls is he was basically saying to them, if there's anyone good here, better come forward.
Well, step up now.
Better come forward because you're all in trouble. And it's, so, and also, like, if you actually, I don't know if you still can do this, but way back when the internet was still a good resource, or Google was still a resource, good search resource, you could Google CIA plane crash cocaine. And even in that film, which Tom Cruise was in, Made in America, it's there in front of your face. A pilot was contracted, and when he got sprung and he was taken to jail, he actually said to them, he said to the DA, he goes, "Oh, look, I won't be here for very long." Next thing you know, they get a call from the governor, who happened to be who at the time? Oh, Bill Clinton. So, and it's all there in front of your face. They actually tell you. So, and they believe, they have this really bizarre spiritual belief. They have to operate within spiritual laws because they're going against the will of God. So the only way that they can actually succeed is to basically operate within these laws. And they believe that they have to tell us what they're going to do to us, and then we agree, so their blood's not on their hands.
Yeah.
So, it's just, like, in as crazy as it all sounds, this is not what I believe. This is what they believe. This is what, this is what they're doing. So,
And when we say
yeah.
they're doing, we've never been able to identify them, not in our generation's history or our parents or their parents, I imagine.
No, well, it's very difficult because it is a secret pact of basically families that are satanic, or they believe they're Luciferian. But it's difficult because they know who each other are. They know who we are, but we don't know who they are. But then they recruit people to the, like, they either get the really smart ones out of university and recruit them young to the cause, in different factions, or they seem to actually, if you look at people like John Brennan, and his little cohorts, Strozak and things like that, and that whole thing that went on, they seem to recruit them really dumb, and they must basically say to them, build up their egos. Oh, you've got power, you've got potential, you're this, you're that. And then, they get promoted. So you can often see the same groups of people getting promoted to these ridiculously wealthy positions that aren't warranted. And so,
But being 100% controlled once they get there.
oh yeah, no, they have to have control over the people. So, and like, I have heard stories that if they can't compromise a senator, so they have to compromise them through either financial gain. However, honeypots used to be, a woman, a beautiful woman, and they would be, and the senator would fall into line because of the, having an affair would destroy his marriage. Now, that's not an issue anymore, so people can overcome that. So now what they'll do is it's children. So the currency of the elite is children, and what they will do is, if a person is non-agreeable, they'll even kidnap them, drug them, and basically strip them naked and stick them into a bed with a naked child, and then take photographs. So there's this whole area where they're completely and utterly compromised.
There's another step up too, I believe, that if you want to become a leader of certain countries, then you have to be involved in the murder or sacrificial sacrifice of a child.
Yeah, there's many reports of that. We have lots of satanic ritual abuse survivors that are basically have stated that. And so, but like, even here in Australia, like Fiona Barnett came out with her story, and it made headlines for one day.
Yeah.
One day.
I'm reading her story at the moment. It is just mind-boggling. For those who aren't aware, Fiona is a survivor of MK Ultra, and in her latest story, she releases some pretty shattering information. If you're a fan of Australian politics, but it will be eye-opening to you, and she can back all this up. That's why I think the media, as you say, Carolyn, are leaving her alone, because she can back up every word that she's printed. If she couldn't, she wouldn't have been allowed to print it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So, she just a lady I would love to have the honor of speaking to one day, because aside from the hell that she's been through, to be able to come through it on the other side and survive as she has, I think is just a testament to her inner strength and courage. She is an amazing woman.
Yeah, there's also Brooke Federline, and she's really interesting as well. She's come out, and she's from New Zealand. I'm not sure if you've come across her, but she'd be a really good one to talk to as well.
Yeah.
But she talks about, her and Jacinda were basically SRA survivors. And she's got a very interesting story about, in her testimony, she outlines Mike Pence, as being the handler for Hillary Clinton. And she was actually programmed by Hillary Clinton. So it's a really, they've got really interesting stories. Like, I know that, like, with the whole mind control thing, there's probably gaps and misinformation placed in there on purpose. But there's a definite through line. All of these people cannot be telling exactly the same story all over the world.
I agree. The storylines are so similar, and all the same names seem to be coming up at the top end as well. Like you mentioned, Hillary Clinton's name comes up, Pence's name comes up, the Obama's name come up. Now, these are only what I would call cabal juniors in the scheme of things. But given the way that finances worked over the last 30 years or so, it has allowed those families, the Bushes on through, to accumulate phenomenal wealth and hide it, some of which I'm led to believe has been hidden in Ukraine underneath these biolabs in the tunnels under there. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, there's been various reports. There's been nothing confirmed, but like I believe that actually will come out because like Russia so far has told the truth. Everything that they've stated, they've backed up, and they've got documentation for.
I believe they have children. I believe that out of one of those biolabs, they pulled over 300 children.
Yeah, well, we can't confirm that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if, they have a press conference and basically Putin lays out all the evidence, because this is the type of stuff that we really need to hear in order to wake people up, because they've taken exorbitant amounts of money, and it's always tax dollar money. It's always us that are funding things, either directly or indirectly. Jesse Ventura noted that the reason why the CIA was trafficking cocaine was so that they could do all of these things. They could actually fund their black ops and their, and also their tunnel projects and their DNA projects and their, and when you get right down to it, the thing that people find it really hard to believe is it's actually what they believe is that it's the seed of Adam that's the issue. So it's us, it's the humans that are, because they don't believe that they're human. Believe they actually, you can go right into the whole esoteric stuff. They actually believe they're from a completely different star system and all that sort of stuff. Now, crazy or not crazy, doesn't matter. This is what they believe, but they fund each other. So they've always funded each other. And what they do now is they've corrupted, so what they did was the whole thing about too big to fail. What they've done is they've done that with the corruption. So they've corrupted at all levels of government, even the local government. There's corruption in that. And so it's not even that there are people directly involved from, like the Obama administration here in my hometown. What it is they've put people who should be doing their jobs into holding people accountable into positions of power. And so what it is they basically they cover things up. So the corruption has become so big. And I mean, that's basically their goal is they're like in some of their writings, this is not what I believe. Again, I have to say this, in their writings, they believe that they want God to give up on the earth, and they have to do that by getting everyone involved in the corruption, and so it's become so big and so powerful.
So are we seeing, well, I'm sure we're seeing the Third World War. Why aren't people recognizing it? Is it just simply the lack of bombs? Let's exclude Russia, Ukraine at the moment. Is it the lack of, conventional warfare that people are refusing to accept that there is a war going on?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there will be a Third World War. I think that they will be. I think that they may try to, let off a nuke, because I know that Russia has been practicing to absorb a first nuclear strike. So Russia are certainly prepared for them to do that. I think that so what Vlad's doing is he's actually taking off the head of the snake. So a lot of these families and a lot of the experiments going on there, like that was their little Nazi state. That was their safety zone.
That's
and so once
and the battalion there, the Azov battalion, is essentially, I dare say, the only force that's left in Mariupol. And the reason that Mariupol is being destroyed is that is the home base to the Azov battalion, is that the Azov battalion is not a Ukraine military organization. It is a paramilitary organization owned by the Khazarians and supported by NATO.
Yeah,
this is going to get nasty.
And I don't know that it'll come to that though, because they seem to me to be looking for hunting. NATO seem to be hunting around looking for support. I don't see that they're actually getting it. Also, the other thing was the Russians got the shits the other day, and they decided to vaporize one of the military camps. So they had all of these people coming over as volunteers, and it kind of makes you wonder if they've not been doing their
due diligence.
MK Ultra. I won't go into MK Ultra too much, but their MK Ultra thing, to call in their super soldiers, because they had a whole heap of people flocking from all over the world to basically go to the Ukraine. Russia got the shits and sent in the Khazal, and basically vaporized the whole thing. Well, a whole heap of them decided to turn around and leave. And I saw two people's testimonies online saying, whatever you do, don't come to Russia, don't come to Ukraine. It's a trap, because we can't get out. And so they were turning the Azov were turning them away at the border as they were trying to cross into Poland or into Russia and that sort of stuff, and sending them back.
And that strike you're talking about happened on a base that's about 12 miles, I think, from the Polish border, and it hit a very specific building that had been, as far as I'm led to believe, had been the coordination point for those people coming in from outside of Ukraine. You're right, fighters that wanted to come in and fight, and there was something else going on there too, which I couldn't even begin to allude to, but I would suggest that it probably had something to do with child trafficking or biological weapons.
Yeah, that's it. What's really interesting though is that if you actually look at the because they're beating the war drums, especially like Scott Morrison and that sort of stuff, and I'm just like, are you freaking crazy? Like, the Russians are not only really tough and really fierce fighters, they turn back two of the greatest military armies that they'd ever seen. And they, like with Napoleon, what was it? Kutuzov basically conducted a war of attrition where he just retreated. And of course, Napoleon, thinking he was doing a great job, but they're running away, kept on going further, got caught in the snow and things like that. The supply line was basically busted up. And then you've also got, so what had actually happened with the Russians in World War II was they'd been severely weakened from the Winter War. And so they were defeated there. I think it cost them 1 million soldiers. But the reason why is because what Stalin had actually effectively done is anyone who, in order to keep people faithful to the cause, anyone who was underneath, like, for example, a general, somebody who was second in command to a general, would basically dob him in if he saw him engaged in any activity. Now, leading up to the World War II, Russia went from pro-Germany, anti-Germany, pro-Germany, anti-Germany, pro-Germany. So even though the commanding officers had been in alignment with the current policy, once it changed over, the people underneath would dob them in, then move up. So they had a whole heap of generals, and not only in generals, it was actually also in the intelligence areas. And so they were basically inept, inexperienced. So when Hitler invaded, it was actually just the people are fierce fighters. Very often it was just a small group of men, and they conducted guerrilla warfare. And that also happened with Napoleon. He didn't expect the guerrilla warfare tactics.
It was pitchforks and axes.
Yeah, it was Molotov cocktails, literally.
Yeah. Exactly. Where did the Molotov cocktail come from? Right.
Yeah, that's it. So, but not only are they fierce fighters, okay, but also Russia has got hypersonic weapons, and so I think that NATO were actually a bit shocked the other day when Russia got the shits and decided to use a really, a very, I think it's called Khazal, and I think they're all a bit shocked, but it's just like, guys, what, do you not understand? What are you reading? There's very good reports. Serious Report is a brilliant resource. He's been covering their strategic weapons for years, Yeah. So I'm just like,
and they have developed that weapon for a couple of different reasons, but most closest to home would be Putin's dislike of the Khazarians and the mafia there, the child trafficking, the sex trafficking, everything that goes on there. And it is a hub for all of Europe. It is, the hub for it. And one of the bases that they were operating out of, some believe to be the HQ, was buried some 8 kilometers underneath the surface. So the only thing that was going to reach it was that hypersonic weapon.
Yeah.
So, and apparently it got there okay.
Yeah, I know. Well, see, the thing is too, your Bidens and like that Hunter Biden laptop coming up at the moment. You know, that's actually, like, I was carrying on about that 2 years ago, and I got hammered about it and that sort of stuff. Now, one of the things that I heard from a reliable source, but I haven't actually laid eyes on it myself, was that Rupert personally sent out an email to all of his employees saying, do not cover the Hunter Biden laptop. So, you know, how do we push these kinds of things into the mainstream media? So
One
it's
of those employees to supply us with that email. That'd be the easiest way.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah,
So the problem is, though, is they would know where it came from. But it's not like I haven't asked. Let me put it like that.
yeah, I don't. Yeah.
So but so, like, there's some really interesting things going on. From my understanding, from what I'm hearing at the moment, is that basically the war's done. You know, it's all done and dusted. Yeah. And also it was pretty much done and dusted pre them actually even launching the troops, because in order to secure biolabs, you actually, like, because they have to be managed in a specific way, you can't actually just basically go in. You can vaporize them, but most of them you can't. So they had to, so that so it's pretty much done and dusted. And so I don't know what will happen. I don't have a crystal ball, but I've heard from 3 sources that I kind of like get a lot of information from, that it's pretty much all over. But also what's actually happening is the Brics is coming through. So what's going to actually happen to the what the Brics is a collaboration of countries that have decided not to use the petrodollar. Just a quick lesson for people who don't understand what the petrodollar is. As a US dollar, in order to buy oil, you have to buy it in US dollars. So that's why the US dollars is always the most valued dollar. So now what's actually happened is they've said to Russia, you're very bad, we're going to take you off the Swiss system. They've gone, okay, we've got our own. And so they're able to actually trade. So, for example, maybe it's a country like India can actually say to Russia, we'll buy it off you. We'll buy your oil or your energy off you. Here's the money, and pay either in their own currency, or Russia may even turn around and say, pay us in gold. And so it gives other people, it gives other countries an option, you know, whereas before they haven't had that option.
Yeah, so, absolutely. An asset-backed, gold-backed financial system, which is
the QFS.
Yeah, pretty much where we think we're going to be going very shortly. There's a lot of talk about the digital side of that as well, but we'll save that to another day because we've only got sort of 10 minutes left. So let's keep on, because that really will be the end of the cabal when that happens, won't it? You know, the quantum computing comes into it. And,
well, I think Cliff High with his web bots, he did an interesting report the other day about devolution, and he also basically talked about how, like, once their dollars are taken away, it doesn't matter how much they try to prop it up in the next couple of years, it's just people are going to move away from it. That's why I really encourage people to get into the cryptocurrencies, because because with the cryptocurrencies, what's actually happened is that they have a limited supply. So whereas in the dollar, what they can do is they can just print it. That's why inflation is out of control. Whereas if you become familiar with cryptocurrencies, people are moving away from this corporatocracy or corporate plutocracy. And so you can even see that in the psyche of the people, because people often complain, government. And I don't know, I've never spoken to I actually have spoken to one person, okay, that thinks that our government's good. Everybody, mostly the conversation is, oh God, we need to get rid of the whole lot of them. And so what we have to do is we need to start paying attention, but we also need to take responsibility, because we got here because we weren't paying attention and we weren't taking responsibility. So now what we've got is a whole generation, several generations of people who have got probably the emotional capacity of an 8-year-old child. They're used to the government being mummy or daddy, and taking care of them. Okay, so what we have to do is we actually have to get people out of that alignment, and we need to move them into basically be responsible for your own wealth, not only wealth creation, but also your assets. Take responsibility for your money. and with the cryptocurrencies, what it does is it provides us options so that even if they take over, say, for example, if the CIA take over the Bitcoin, or they get a hold of Bitcoin and it becomes very bad, hey, we did it before, we'll do it again, we'll create our own.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. I've got to admit, crypto is not something I'm over at the moment. I've got some friends who have been in it. One friend in particular who's been in it for a long time. She'll know who I'm talking about. I don't know. It's me and numbers. I don't really understand it. People show you spreadsheets, people show you tickers and all that sort of stuff, and my eyes just roll up in the back of my head. I don't begin to understand how it will work, but I do believe that it will be a hell of a lot more secure than the cash system that we currently run under the fiat system. So I'm all for that. And look, I don't mind the idea of going out and finding a bit of my own gold.
Yeah.
I've got some friends who do just that, and have a couple of bars that they've been able to put together themselves, which must be a great secure feeling for with what we're facing going ahead, because they're quite awake as well.
Yeah, that's it. Well, look, I mean, I think, we've probably got a little bit of a battle ahead of us, but there's a lot of stuff breaking our way. And, if you look at, I don't know, but if you look at a lot of our talking heads and our politicians and things like that, they don't look very comfortable at the moment.
Oh.
So I don't know what's going on in the background. I've got a few things that I could guess at, but they
both.
no, they don't look very comfortable. So, and there is a lot of things breaking our way. Like, I mean, I know that like the CCP, it's like anything, like, people will collectivize one thing, saying, oh, Mossad, it's all evil and that sort of stuff. What you have to understand is the Khazarian mafia set up the Israel to destroy Israel. They're in the process of destroying Israel, which is the Sephardic Jews. They built the Twin Towers to destroy the Twin Towers. This is their kind of like, it's almost like some sort of a ritual worship thing that they do, but they have to do that. And so
most of Israel is now 4 shots deep.
Yeah, that's it. And so they're killing they're not killing their own people. They don't actually really like your Jews from the Levitical line, especially like your Torah believing Jews. They see them as the issue. And this is what they do. The Khazarian mafia, the Ashkenazi Jew, they wrap themselves up in this cloak of, oh, we're Jews, and oh, we're, you're being anti-Semitic and things like that, and then try to identify with that. And whereas actually they're not from that line at all. They're not from that seed at all. And so this is how they cloak themselves. But we've got a lot of things breaking our way. Like, and if you look also, I read a lot of, study a lot of Chinese and Chinese history and things like that. But one thing that's really interesting is that, because Henry Kissinger went over to Mao, and basically, you're it, because they had one child policy. They're basically enslaving their people and that sort of stuff. But if you actually look at what's going on, there's things that have changed in China. So they actually have, they've now allowed more than one child, and so that wouldn't be in place if you knew that the CCP and who was backed by it's always the same group of people. So the CCP is backed by the globalists. The World Economic Forum is backed by Davos Group, backed by Bilderberg Group, it's the same group of players every time. They are the ones that fund all of the white papers into order to engineer us socially. They're the ones who, they're behind absolutely everything.
So I'm glad you brought up China. We've only got sort of 5 minutes left to us, but in that time, you've certainly identified the CCP in all of this. There is another faction operating in China, being controlled by a group known as the Dragon Families.
Yeah, Dragon Family, Lee family.
Yeah. So are you up to speed with?
Well, Benjamin Fulford actually does a lot of work on those. That's actually really interesting. And I also, I don't know if I could I know somebody that's very familiar with them. The elders. She refers to them as the elders.
Yeah.
And she, I think I can say this. So they're, like yesterday when we spoke briefly, they were trying to figure out what was going on with this, the plane crash. so, and they're like very difficult person to get a hold of. But she was saying that, you know, she'd spoken to the elders, and they thought that it was a hit, and they were trying to figure out what was going on, a hit from the bad guys.
Yep.
So yeah, so I mean, look, we've got a lot. We've got things are really hopeful. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's breaking our way. And we will win this. I know we will.
Yep.
But then we've got a lot of mopping up operations to go on. Like, you know,
a lot of people in pain, a lot of people not understanding what's going on. A lot of people are just going to be in shock, and going to require a lot of understanding from those of us that have been awake a little bit longer. And you can't blame people. I've been trying to say this now pretty consistently. You can't blame people for not being as awake as you are. Circumstances, everybody's circumstances is different. You know, the interesting thing I've found that the high achievers in school, the ones who all went to university and have gone on to really successful careers, they're the people that are following the knowledge blindly. You know, they're just holding their arm out, doing whatever the government says, and not questioning anything. Whereas those kids that, you know, weren't the top of the class, maybe were a bit mischievous, maybe left school a bit early, didn't finish HSC, certainly never went to university. These are the people that are awake and seeing all this. So,
well, Charlotte Isaby's book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but but she actually talks about how she found out she was actually from a bloodline family. But she worked for several administrations, and when she was working for education, she tried to put together some really good policies, and all of her policies were rejected. So she did an investigation to find out why. What she actually found out was it directly went to the Rockefeller Foundation and their white paper think tank on how they did not want individuals, creative individuals, because they would start up competitions, you know, compete against their corporations.
Yep.
So what they wanted basically worker drones. So it was basically, and now what they've done is they don't need us anymore because they've got their AI is basically up to speed, so they don't need us anymore. So they're carrying out their, you know, extermination policies, and that's, you know, it's a horrendous thing, but we're going to win this, and we're going to turn this around, and and we're going to you know, we're going to basically have a huge mop-up operations, and we're going to make Australia great, actually.
Absolutely, we are. Carolyn, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you, and I'd like to ask you back regularly. You want to give us a bit of an update on the deep state at any time. Would love to have you back. And
Sure, it'd be a pleasure.
yeah, well, I think certainly the group of people that watch this will be getting a lot out of today. And certainly look forward to doing it all again. Thanks for all your work that you're putting into it. And if we can help here at the show at all in any way, then all you've got to do is ask. So,
thank you.
All right, lovely to talk with you, and we'll do it all again on the Unified Solution. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.